Jy is geskakel op die groot ontbyt, ons eerste gas in die ateljee en Steven van Coller en dis visiepresident strategie samesmelting en verkrygings van die MTN groep. That's big words. And we're talking about the World Economic Forum and it was in January this year. Welcome, Steven.
Thanks very much.
And it's an early morning. Are you a morning person?
I am actually. I normally wake up more or less this time anyway, so
okay, fantastic.
Good to be here.
But thanks for your time. We really appreciate that. Let's go to the theme of this year at the World Economic Forum. And it said that it was responsive and responsible leadership. What exactly does that phrase mean to you and how would you define it?
So there's two bits to that. There's both the responsive bit and there's the responsible bit. And I think you need to I talk to both of them. But really what's driving it is today, with the world being connected and through social media, when there's a news item, it comes out very quickly and it spreads very quickly. And so in the old days, maybe you could, it would come out in the newspaper and you'd have 24 hours till the next newspaper and you had time to think about it. Today you don't. And so you have to have a structure around your business to manage news. And we've seen the Ford issue, we've seen VW, we've seen a few of these issues that I think sometimes they don't manage them quick enough, and that's really becoming a theme, is how do you make sure you keep your brand alive. And I think the big thing around it is that today, because of this connectedness, your brand is what people perceive you rather than what you tell them. So they say today you need to spend a 70% on the actual product and 30% on marketing, whereas in the old days you spend 30% on the product and 70% telling people how wonderful it was. It doesn't work anymore because people can, talk to each other. The second thing also is that people today are far more discerning about what they buy and how they spend their money because there's all this information. You've got access to it all the time. And so if you don't have a responsible brand that you're actually not destroying the economy or, you're actually adding value to society, you'll see people have already started differentiating where they spend their money. And it's really important that you make sure whatever you do is actually, good for society as a whole rather than just good for your profits or your shareholders. And so that's becoming a big theme just because of this connectiveness.
And it's actually, there can be no company in today's time that there must be a person doing their social media, like on a permanent basis, because, going back to the Ford issue, after like weeks of tweeting and chaos, they only responded, whereas you get a company like, and we can say it, but like Woolworths that will but someone will say, yes, shop at 4 is dirty, and someone will respond within minutes to say, attending to it, we'll talk to the whatever. So it's as if there's a permanent person just monitoring social media.
Well, I think the issue is what technology is doing is it's actually putting a lot more power in the consumer's hands. And you can either see that as negative or you can see it as positive. So if you actually crowdsource that, as they call it, why don't you, as the customer, tell me which toilets are dirty, which shops aren't working, because I want to go and fix that because I need you to come and shop at my shop. It's a more glass half full view than a glass half empty view. And I think that's where some companies are really making it work for them, because they then get that information, they do something about it, and customers start seeing the change. The reality today is, if you have a look at probably 30 and below, they used to instant messaging, instant answers, Instagram. And if you don't, as a company, give them that instant response, they've got a problem. They want it now, not in a day or 2 days or 3 days. And so you have to move with the times, I suppose, and to keep your customers happy.
And going back to the responsive and responsible leadership, it's not a new idea, but was there new ways that it was highlighted at the forum?
I think what's happening, the forum's a very interesting place because people start discussing concepts. And what's interesting about it is you've got 2,500 business leaders from around the world, and you start getting themes coming out, and people debate and discuss them at a high level. And you can see almost sort of 2 years later or 3 years later, when you go back, these have now become real things. And some companies obviously fast adopters, some are followers, but you're seeing more and more of that being discussed and people discussing how they're dealing with the issues and different ways that they found to do things. And it's quite important today because the world's changing fast. You haven't got lots of time to do things. So you've got to listen and you've got to take feedback and you've got to adapt and adjust.
Someone like Richard Branson, and he's still standing out the way he is doing business, treats his people, just his structures. But it still feels like he's one of the only ones. But what prompted like this global realization that business leadership styles and policies must change?
Well, there's two things. I think technology has made the world very small, and so you can't hide anymore, and you can't do things that are not good for society as a whole, especially if you're a large company. And so the way companies need to deal with things is very, very different. And as I said earlier, your brand is how people perceive you, not the advertising board you put up anymore. Because they can read that, but then they'll say, well, what's my experience? Or let me ask my community or my crowd what they think of that, because I don't really believe that. And then you get a much broader information sharing. And so it's very, very important that you are contributing to society, making a difference. And some of it is just common sense. If you think about a large company, if you can do something as a company that's going to help GDP, you just by definition will be a benefactor of that as long as you've got a good product. If you have a look at what people like SAB have done for years in South Africa with their training programs and things like that, they know that maybe 90% of those people will leave SAB eventually, but they make them disciples. And that's why they've been so dominant. They've done, policies around, okay, let's not own our own logistics. Let's get, the driver owner schemes. We'll help them buy the truck, et cetera, et cetera. And that just creates disciples, and that's why I think they've remained so dominant.
Stephen, we just spoke about what happened at Davos, and I know it's been in Jan. It's the first time we can talk to you. You were there. Was there still excitement in the air? Because, worldwide, I think a lot of people were scared, like with Brexit and what's happening in America. Everybody feels uneasy, but now it's still stable. How was the vibe there?
The vibe was actually quite positive. It was quite interesting that generally the main people like the Christine Lagarde, etc., were pretty positive about the world economy rebounding a bit this year. So 2017 is meant to be better than 2016, and so that was quite interesting. The biggest issue that was, as she called it, the biggest black swan that she's worried about is that in this technology-driven world, there's lots of basic jobs that are going to be technologied out, and this idea that big countries can use cheap sources of labor to drive export growth is going to die, and unless you start retraining your people and your staff, and so levels of education are becoming critically important, because if you don't do that, you'll end up being non-competitive because technology will do it faster. And so her view was this black swan. China's been driving world growth for the last couple of years, but it's all export-led, low-cost, cheap labor. That's going to go away. What's going to replace it? And it was her biggest worry, and that for me was actually quite interesting.
We spoke about an interview you've done there with Alec Hogg, but you also mentioned that you think it's going to be even more essential to align what you're trying to achieve as a company with the broader goals of society. What did you mean by that?
Well, as I said earlier, is that social media and this connectiveness, and so many more people have access to news immediately. There's alerts that come on your phone. There's all sorts of things that if you don't have a business strategy around your brand that the general community can align to, you've got a problem, because they've got choice today, and they crowdsource that, a choice rather than in the past you'd advertise and say how wonderful your product is. If people have a bad experience, they share it. And everyone gets it, and then everyone makes their own opinion. And some people don't even bother to go and test that theory. If someone has said it's bad, they've got nothing to gain by saying it's bad other than they had a bad experience. So I don't want to go there. Let me try something else straight away. So it's very important that you make sure your brand is aligned with what society is asking of you. The second thing is, a lot of large companies get licenses in some shape or form. And that's actually I suppose, a country commodity, because not everyone gets it. And so if you get given one, you've got a privilege, and therefore you need to give something back. It's not just, I've got this, let me make as much money and disappear. Yes. Those days are gone because of this ability to share information. And information used to be hidden in, big written ledgers. Today it's all digital, all accessible very, very quickly. And some of these big data capabilities are phenomenal. And so this is what's driving information in society. And as I said, the boot is on the consumer's foot these days squarely, not on the actual provider.
You can't just do what you want to do anymore. But it's like you mentioned the social license. And the two things that's come up into my mind is you've got the environmental responsibility on this side, and then this technology on this side. Is there a balance between the two? Because people are just as sensitive. And like even us sitting here in this building, if we sit quiet for 5 minutes, the light's going to go off. So it's also it's dark the whole time. It's always saving electricity, saving water. This whole building. How important is that balance? For environmental. What do you do for the environment?
Well, I think it is important, but it's really been driven by technology. And so, if you as a company aren't using technology to do things like switch the lights off,
yes.
When no one's using them, number one, it's just wasteful.
Yeah.
But number two is if you just have a look in South Africa and you have a look at these renewable energy projects, they've done 4 rounds of them, and I think the price in round 4 is something like 30-odd% of the price in round 1, just because they've learned so much and they're doing things differently and technology's changed. I mean, they're saying that in the US for the first time that renewable energy, solar energy, is crossing grid parity, so it's actually cheaper than the average cost of the grid. And we're starting to see that in South Africa as well. And so, as Singularity University talks about, is we don't have scarcity, we've just got wastefulness. And actually there's more than enough water, there's more than enough food, if we just don't waste it.
Yes.
There's something in the US, they throw away 50% of food that gets cooked.
Sure.
And so imagine if you took 50% of the US food and distributed it worldwide. I mean, there's not a shortage of food. Yeah. There's not a shortage of water as long as we conserve it. We just waste. It's like the toilet hasn't been reinvented for 200 years. It's a Victorian era.
That is the stupidest thing ever that we do with it.
There's enough waste in your house to actually power your electricity for you.
Sure. Stephen, just a quick one. The structure of companies. And we're going to talk about another company a bit later, but, we get the managers and then get the guy on top of him, and then you get to the big boss and then the CEO. And is that structure going to change, you think?
Well, I think it has to. And it's the pyramid structure. And I'll tell you a funny story. When I was doing a strategy session with my youngsters, we were having a coffee break, and one of the youngsters came to me and said to me, Stephen, I've had a look at your bio. I see you're very interested in Egyptology. And I said, yes, I'm fascinated by it, all the maths behind it, etc., etc. And he said, do you know they built the pyramids? I said, yes, I've actually been there. He said, they were built 5,000 years ago. I said, yes, it's amazing, isn't it? It's one of the great, ancient wonders of the world. He said, yes, but do you know that they're 5,000 years old? I said, yes. He said, so why do you use it as your management structure?
That's so clever.
And it was really woke me up to the fact that you need to manage from the center today, because everyone's got access to Google and access to information. That's no longer differentiation. It's actually the wisdom you apply to that knowledge. And that's not the gift of, someone who's just older, because younger people think differently. And so you need to take that all in, and you can't take it in unless you're in the center enabling people. And my theory is that actually today, because of this ability for people to go outside their experience. So it doesn't matter what you did at varsity. You can go and read stuff, do courses online. You can do all sorts of stuff with MIT, with Harvard online. You can re-educate yourself permanently. So unless you actually mentor people and help them deal with the knowledge that they're getting, you're actually not getting the best out of them. And so it's really important to actually manage alongside them instead of on top of them.
We spoke about management style, and I want to bring in, because you're also from banking, your banking experience for years before the MTN group now. Michiel Leroux with the Capitec phenomena. The way he said, just in an article of Forbes magazine, said that the offices at head office, they're all the same size. They're all fly economy. No one calls him sir. Whether you a new guy at the company, whether you're a manager, no one calls him Meneer Michiel. You know, it's very informal, and there's still respect. Do you think it's going that way? Other practical things that you've seen happening?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you really believe this management from the center thing, then that's the only way to go, first of all. But, secondly, the issue today is that you need to get efficiency out of your business. That's what's happening everywhere. If you're not the most efficient and the cheapest, you're going to go out of business, because someone's going to find a better way to do it. And one of the interesting things, I remember going to one of my large corporate CEOs when I was a youngster, probably like 20 years ago, and walking out of his office saying, wow, there's so many people that work here, how many people work here? And he said about 30%. And if you think about that, although that's funny, it's the fact is, if you've got people, you've got to get 100% out of them. And in today's world with access to information, if you give people job descriptions and say that's all you're allowed to do, you're just stifling innovation, you're stifling different thought. And so the few things that I've done in the past, one is you need to have task-based work, not job description-based work. And as soon as you do that, your boss is no longer the sole person you're working for, because you're working in a team across different disciplines, and your boss is just bringing that all together and saying to you, this is what people think of you, and trying to mentor forward. But more importantly is that I think if I'm a 50-year-old white male living in Sandton, how do I really know what a black female living in Soweto really wants? Unless I go and ask someone who's got that experience. So when you build up committees, you've actually got to get a vertical slice of your business, not a horizontal slice. Now, if you've got a vertical slice making decisions, what happens when you go on an aeroplane? Do some sit in the back and some sit in the front? Suddenly you've broken the team. So if you really believe this equality of information and this diversity of views, if you don't run your business like Michiel's running it, you're going to get 30% out of your staff, not 100%, and you can see who's going to win.
I would love you back on the show, Stephen, because, I've got quotes, what you said in business, and just your view. We spoke about Davos now, but I think just business lessons from you. So maybe in future, I can't tell you, I've got here quotes and stuff that you've said that I think we can learn a lot from. So hopefully we'll get you back into studio. But thank you for this morning. And all of the best with MTN.
Thanks very much for having me. It's been fun.
No, it was a pleasure. Ons kyk vinnig wat gebeur in die kombuis.